Are you feeling it, but your playing doesn't show it? Here's my threefold approach to express yourself and make sure you get your point across every single time. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to this episode of the Play Guitar Podcast. I am Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and check out the description for all of the links from the show. Have you ever felt really good when you were playing? You know, some people say, no. Yeah, no, of course you do. It feels good to play guitar. If you've ever felt so good when you were playing, but you knew no one else could tell, you weren't communicating, you weren't getting that point across. Or have you ever been having a horrible day and you didn't feel like playing, but you had to, and you got compliments? People said this was your best performance ever. Didn't equal out, right? Expressing yourself with your instrument is very different than expressing yourself with your voice or with your body language. A lot of players never catch on to this, but understanding how to take control of your musical expression is one of the hallmarks of a professional player. And once you know how to do it, once you know how to create the expression that is appropriate for what you're doing, for the song or whatever, no matter how you're actually feeling, the consistency that you've been wanting in your playing will start to take shape. Today, I am sharing the 3 pillars of musical expression. Phrasing is 1, articulation is 2, and dynamics is 3. Get those 3 things under control and you're killing it, okay? So let's explore the importance of expression in solos and how it enhances the listener's experience. Let's dive into the 3 pillars of musical expression. The first one is phrasing. What is phrasing? People have a hard time putting their finger on what phrasing is, right? Well, okay, I'm not phrasing correctly. Basically, how it's thrown around is, well, you know, you're just not playing it right. It doesn't sound, you might be playing the notes, but it doesn't sound right. Think about phrasing. Where does that come from? From language, right? The voice, communication. Phrasing is very important. We are trying to get ideas across without using words. We have harmony, we have melody, and we have rhythm. But we can also use those 3 things in a way that sounds similar to what our audience is used to hearing, which is the voice. We're going to create melodic phrases. This is an idea that can occur in one breath. Sentences that can be said before you have to stop and take another breath. That's basically why sentences are as long as they are. If we didn't need to breathe so much, we could have much longer sentences where people would pay attention to them. But at some point, it feels natural to stop, take a breath in, reflect on what you just heard, and move on to the next thing. And it's no different in music. We use sentences. Sentences build to paragraphs. Paragraphs build to chapters. All of these things have pauses in them. It's not just like a computer just firing words at you. It's not like just playing 10 million notes for a half hour straight. We need to be able to process these things. And these spaces in melody are very important for communication. Also, those spaces using pauses and rest not only give people time to process what they've just heard, they also can build emphasis. They can add something to a point that you're trying to make. They can also build anticipation. If you think that something's coming and you hold off for a second, and if you just say, okay, I'm going to wait to the very last second before I hit this big note, well, your listener knows something's going to happen. and they can feel that it's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. That holds attention and builds emphasis to what you eventually get to. What's another thing that we can do to enhance this, to get our expressiveness going on? Well, there's one thing we can use is vibrato. And vibrato is taking a note and shaking a little bit, making so it's not just, it's hard for me to not even use vibrato, to use a flat note, right? We talked the other day about all the different ways that you can use vibrato, right? But you've all heard different people singing and who use different styles of vibrato, and that can bring expressiveness into our own playing as well, too. Understanding vibrato techniques, using these things to match the style of the song or the mood or the emotion that you're trying to put in. I love using vibrato on sustained notes as well, too. When you're playing fast, you have a lot of notes together. I won't use vibrato at all during those passages. There's no time for it. Before you could even start a vibrato, you're on to the next note. But when you get to that sustained note, adding a little gives what I just feel right there. It gives a sense of it's a warmth, really. It has a warm feeling. So if I'm not trying to feel warm, if I'm trying to feel cold, no vibrato. Warm, yes. Very human sounding and it relates to people as well. And just think of B.B. King. He uses a very fast vibrato. It creates a sense of urgency, fun, and excitement. I like to talk about punctuation. This is something we talk a lot about in the podcast, but we also talk a lot about this in our lessons too. The wandering guitar solo. I ask questions about what's wrong with your playing, what would you like to do, what you like to be able to do, and everything I play sounds like scales. That I've heard that quite a few times. We'll just say that. So when you have a guitar solo, you're collecting ideas and putting them across. I have this lick and I have this lick and I have this lick. That's how guitar players usually think. Okay, we've got these different licks and we're going to play them in different places. But it's not packaged. Usually they run into another, they sound aimless, and they just go up and down. When we use punctuation in our solos, we get to package our ideas into nice little presents that we hand to the audience. Here's one present. Now here's another present for you. I've got another present for you here like this. And you didn't know this one was going to come. Here's another one, right? So each one of these is packaged. We have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to every idea that we put across. So how do you end a musical idea? Well, you use typically a strong note, but you can use weak notes as well too. Ending a phrase, I could end the song right there. That would be a good ending place. I ended on the root note, the tonic note of the chord that I was playing. This is in C. C minor 7th chord, right? That was my punctuation. That tells me, hey, I'm done saying what I'm going to say. Now I'm going to move to the next thing. Back to the C. Hit that root. Now, both of those times, I'm now going through the 5 chord to a 4 chord back to a 1 chord. I've been ending my phrase on the same little note there, but that's not the strong note for those 2 chords. That creates something called a question, right? So the first 2 sentences, perfect. Now I'm going to the 4 chord. Now I'm going to repeat this, but over these other chords. Now this is not the strong note for the chord that's being played. That sounds like a question. Got something else has to happen. Another question. How are we going to resolve this? When we go back to the 1 chord and then we resolve on that C again, now it's matching. It didn't match over the 5 chord, didn't match over the 4 chord, but it matched when we got back to the 1 chord there. So it was like I had 2 sentences that were statements, 2 questions, and then I resolved back to a state. So we talked a little bit about this last week, using articulation to get our point across. What we're going to do is explore some of the different articulations that you could use, and it may give you a vehicle to express yourself. How about legato and staccato? With legato, we're using hammer-ons and pull-offs to smooth out the line. Now, I didn't pick every note. I picked the first note, hammer on, and hammer on again. So there was only 1 hard hit note and 2 smooth notes. Now I can pull off. So I'm going to take my pinky, this is on the 11th fret on the B string, and I'm going to pull off to the 9th fret and then to the 8th fret. Sounds very different than, right? Or, and in fact, I wouldn't even have to pick the second time. What's the feeling that you get when you listen to legato technique? What is that? Why would you want to use this? Let's listen to this. There I am picking every single note. Now I'm going to do it legato. What is the difference to that? One sounds choppier, one smoother. But it has an emotional impact as well too. It's not just that it's smoother, it sounds freer to me. It doesn't sound restrained. It sounds like it's floating a little bit. When would you want to express that? It's a floating feeling in a song too. So I said earlier, I like to play over soaring leads. Well, one of those techniques that I would use is legato playing. How about staccato playing? That is where you don't let the note ring out at all. I always think of staccato. I see violinists in an orchestra and you see the bow and just moves for just a quick second. But. When you see it written on a page, staccato playing, they still use all of the rhythms that you would normally play. Quarter notes, 8th notes, 16th notes. But there's a little dot above it that'll let you know that just play this very quickly. Now it's on that beat, but it's very quickly. I'll go through all 3 of them. So here's picked. Here's legato. Here's staccato. What do those 3 things mean to you? How do they make you feel? If you were trying to express yourself in a melody or a solo or even a bass line, what would those things get across? You wouldn't want to use them in the wrong place. If you're playing like a reggae song, that floating feeling doesn't really go great with that. But the staccato might. How about slides and trills? That's pretty neat. What does that remind you of? To me, it reminds me of the voice. Singers that swoop up into notes. And when you hear a singer swoop up into a note, it gives a certain feeling to you. You can bend. You can slide. It's a very different way of getting your point across than legato technique, than staccato, right? Sliding into the note, to me, is very, very, very vocal. What about trills? Going back and forth on different licks. I guess that could be vocal. This may be more of a guitar thing, but it's definitely an emotional thing. When I tell you what they sound like to me, you could be like, no, that's not what they sound like to me. I wouldn't use that the way that you would. And that's what's going to make your style different from someone else's. And the last part of expression that's rarely used is taking control of your dynamics. We talked a little bit about this yesterday as well, using varying degrees of volume to get your point across. What does changes in volume say to you? And you can use different things along with that. You can use accents. So one note is louder than all of the other notes, and that brings across a certain type of expression. Or it could be on the beat. And what that does is emphasize different parts of your phrase, but it's similar to emphasizing different words or different syllables, which people do all the time when they're trying to communicate. We can use dynamics to transition between soft and loud passages. We can use it to express confusion or fear or resolution. We can tell someone that this is the big parts coming up. We can move on to the big part using dynamics. Now, I hope when you get home tonight and you sit down to play, you've got some ideas on how you can express yourself better. Make some dedicated time to practice your trills, practice your slides, practice your legato, practice your staccato, practice these things. These are all tools that you have in your pocket that you can use at any time to add maximum expression into your playing, and you will use them differently than everyone else, and that's going to make your playing very, very special. And I'm going to call it that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a favorable Apple Podcast review. It is the best way to make sure we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help and structure and results in your guitar playing sound good to you, what are you waiting for? Play Guitar Academy is here. Join the world's most exciting and carefully planned guitar system. And together we will build your online home base for guitar. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next episode.